All right, we're in this. Thank you guys for being patient. /marker. So this is, we're reacting to the story of Kaz.
Is what Maria hides behind the astral clock tower. This is the fishing hamlet, the third and final stage of Bloodborne's DLC. Beneath the surface, off to the left and the right, is the city of Yharnam. The nightmare we progressed through,
Yharnam's underneath?
resided beneath the Great Lake all along, which explains why all the patients in the previous episode heard the dripping and the currents and the rain. I went through the footage actually.
Yeah, Ryan, I watched your videos
and
in 2x.
just before the clock tower opened, both
Ladies and
hands aligned
gentlemen,
on one of the many runes
we
that
got
line the edges of the clock. Guess which one it was? They pointed to a deep sea rune. It reads, "This transcription of the Great One's inhuman voices depicts down-reaching currents. This rune means deep sea.
So,
Great volumes
wait a
of
second.
water serve as
So
a
all of Yharnam is underwater? This is not on Vadi. Miyazaki, that's a bit of a reach. How come there's no dripping anywhere?
bulwark guarding sleep, and an augur of the eldritch truth. Overcome this
No,
hindrance.
the DLC
and
is
seek
a
what
nightmare.
yours.
Okay.
The truths hidden here have to do with the Byrgenwerth scholars who violated this small
I've always
fishing
wanted to
village
stack
long
rocks
ago.
like that.
Byrgenwerth.
Burger. Burger World. Burger World.
Fiends. Atonement for the wretches. By the rat of
It's
Mother
not a
Cast.
literal dream.
Mercy for the poor wasn't child. Mercy. Oh, please.
There's a lot in this dialogue. Firstly, this inhabitant of the village had some interaction with the scholars of Byrgenwerth, the wretches, as he calls them.
We didn't
the
eat that
murderers,
guy.
The blood-crazed fiends. They did something to a child, and he calls upon the wrath of Mother Cos, whose name should probably be familiar to you, right?
Ah, Cos. Or some say Cosmo. Do you hear our prayers?
Clearly, she's a great one. As recommended by a couple of people in the last video, if you come here as a piece of cauliflower, then instead the villager says this.
Curse here, curse there. A curse for he and she. White hair. Bottomless curse. A bottomless sea.
What is that?
Source of all greatness. All things that be. Listen for the baneful chants. Weep with them.
You come here as a piece of
one in
cauliflower.
trance. And weep with us. Oh, weep with us.
So, what did those of Byrgenwerth do to warrant curses being placed upon them? It must have been pretty terrible, and the accursed brew reads, "Skull of a local from the violated fishing village. The inside of the skull was forcibly searched for eyes, as evidenced by the
I
innumerable..."
will say this. You guys know how I feel about lore, but to know that, all right, so you have this phenomenal game that just sets the bar so high with Bloodborne and Dark Souls, and then there's actual, like, meaning to it. Not that that's high on our priority list. It just is like, it's kind of mind-blowing to me. Like that there's an actual story. I thought you just go through and destroy
scratches
stuff.
and indentations. No wonder the skull became stewed in curses. And this skull partly explains it. It sounds like the scholars of Byrgenwerth came to this little village and violated the inhabitants in the name of new discoveries. And it also sounds like the villagers called upon a Great One
Violated?
to curse the scholars. According to the Moon Rune, the Great Ones are sympathetic in spirit, after all. And based on the way the Byrgenwerth scholars were violating them and searching them for eyes, clearly the villagers had had some interaction with the Eldritch Truth. So the scholars were cursed, and so were their successors, the hunters.
Chad, I know this is like a big overarching question, but what is Eldritch? Is that like steampunk stuff?
At this point, I went back and I
It's
unlocked
like
all the cells we found in episode 1. Do you remember those? They were just past
cosmic
Ludwig.
horror.
According
Okay.
to this key, hunters are held within the underground cells, so that things better left unseen and better left unknown will decay quietly. Within the first few cells, we find this church pick hunter. He drops the church pick, which is a sort of pickaxe crossed
Where
with
was
a
this at?
short sword or a spear type thing. And I also unlocked the door that held this guy, who was reciting something about being a true blade of the church.
This is really
According
cool.
to the wiki,
I didn't-
his only purpose
I'll be
is
honest,
to
I didn't
be
think I'd
killed
like
and
this.
looted for his set, which names him as Yamamura the Wanderer, an eastern warrior who pursued a beast for honorable revenge and then became a hunter of the League. The
After
innermost
Ludwig.
cell belonging to the bell ringer remains locked for now.
You hear this?
Wait, what's Sekiro
The
lore?
bells toll. For only death awaits foolish prying eyes, and the church assassins are never far behind.
Clearly there's more to discover, so now that the stage is set, let's play our part and get through to the finale. I love how this stage feels like an actual fishing village. They've
It
done a great
does.
job with that.
We
It's a
talked
unique
about- it's
location
like-
for a level
it
as far as the
feel- you
Soulsborne
feel
series
like-
goes, and they do so much with such a
You
simple
smell the
theme.
salt in the water.
Fishmen are a dime a dozen, and I like how backstabs are actually a viable technique against them, unlike most enemies in Bloodborne up until this point. The fishmen attack in packs, and they serve as the standard enemy, but the real threat are the giant fish troll things. The most scary enemy, in my opinion, is the one that can outrun your player character, and just look at how this thing moves when I turn my back on it. It scared the
We're just gonna gloss over. We're gonna gloss over that.
shit out of me right there. Approximately 1,000 backstabs later, you learn just how difficult these
Fish
things
moly
are.
spam in
Maybe
chat.
I should have used those obviously
I meant
placed
gloss
fire
over
pots
that
against
enemy,
it.
not whatever he said.
A note for next time. Hidden on the cliff face also is a path back to the ladder that was in front of the starting lantern. The player who pays attention is more likely to have checked for a hidden path back, which is a nice touch. And it is pretty worth it to look around all the time. Look at this thing. I noped out of here pretty quick. I didn't really fancy one of those things attacking me on a ladder. And I have to
We get
say,
some dang
again,
front,
I
dang
really
seat
like the
spam in
way
the
this
chat.
bit is designed. I only looked around because
real quick. I'm not calling out Vadi at all. 27 BVs. I'm greedy, but man,
to look around all the
27?
time. Look at this thing. I noped out of here pretty quick. I didn't really fancy one of those things attacking me on a ladder. And I have to say, again, I really like the way
noped
this
out of here
bit is
pretty quick.
designed.
We may have to
I only
use
looked
that.
around because I started to hear the winter lanterns singing, and that's the kind of sound you want to watch out for, and it rewarded me by telling me there's a giant fish troll on the roof. You guys are probably realizing that I really like when games reward the observant player. I've probably said that a lot of times by now. So this next thing that happened probably happened to all of you guys too, right? You start fighting one of the fish trolls and, you convince yourself that other one on the roof isn't going to come attack me. That's not going to happen. And then you're about to win and you're like, hang on, what's that noise? God damn it. One of these things was tough enough, but two?
No thank
I ran
you.
away and I got up the ladder just in time and I was going to plan my next attack, and then I fell in. Don't worry, I survived until I got out, and then I was like, I know, I'll drop those rope Molotov cocktails behind me. They can fall down ladders, right? No, turns out they can't. And then I fell in again, and at this point I just made plunging attacks a part of my strategy. It didn't work, really. Eventually I just got good, and I realized to my surprise that one of them had dropped a weapon. It was the
Ooh.
Rakuyo, which is Maria's weapon. It reads, Hunter weapon wielded by Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower. A trick sword originating in the same country as the Canehurst Chikage. Only this sword feeds not off
Canehurst.
blood, but instead demands great dexterity. Lady
That-
Maria was
Dex-
fond
Dex
of this
users,
aspect of the
Dex
Rakuyo,
users.
as she frowned
Dex
upon
users,
bloodblades,
get 'em outta
being
here.
a distant relative of the Queen. One day, she abandoned her beloved Rakuyo, casting it into a dark well when she could stomach it no longer. What a neat little story. Maria must have eventually given in to her desire for blood, as she certainly uses blood and self-sacrifice in her boss fight. How curious that she's related to Queen Annalise as well. I've got some theories on this, but it'll have to wait for Prepare to Cry. By the end of the playthrough, the Rakuyo
Prepare to
becomes my
Cry.
main weapon. This is a skill build after all, using the
What's
Blades of
Prepare to
Mercy,
Cry?
Burial Blade, and not to mention this character actually looks just like Maria, right? I modeled this character after the doll ages ago, so yeah, who would have thought that that would pay off? It's cool to have a weapon that you can call your own, you know? I've been searching for one for a while, and mine is the Rakuyo. What's yours? You should let me know. In a hut further down, we find a lantern, and lying on the ground, dying next to that lantern, is Simon, the Bowblade Hunter.
Who are you? I'm afraid I've made a bunch of things.
Poor guy, give him a
I can hear the
hand,
bell
lift
now.
him up.
The beast-eyed assassin. He's after me. Again. And again. It never ends. Please. I need you to do something.
What?
This village is the true secret. Testament to the old sins. It feeds this hunter's nightmare.
Do we have to kill this guy?
Please. Bring to an end the horror. So our forefathers sinned. We hunters cannot bear their weight forever.
He's dying on his own.
It just isn't fair.
He's the guy with the first shortcut. Oh.
Simon was one of the last sane
We didn't
hunters
get
in
that.
the nightmare. He pushed us to go deeper and deeper into it, and with Maria gone, he seems like he decided to come forward himself and fight a little bit farther. However, there is another hunter here, other than Simon, someone who doesn't want
the
anyone
elk man.
discovering what lies at the end of the nightmare. Brador, the church assassin. The weapon he uses is the Bloodletter, which assumes its true and terrifying form after it draws upon
Ranged
blood from
dex.
the inner
That's
reaches
we
of one's
got it.
body
We couldn't
and
use
soul.
it.
This is what it reads. This was the only effective method of expelling tainted blood. Also, Brador, isolated in his cell, continued to believe.
Well, well, look who's here. Welcome to my quarters. I've never entertained
We
a
didn't
guest
see this guy,
before.
did we?
Are you going to kill me? After all you've done, kill me. As if to right your wrongs.
Oh.
You get his weapon if you kill him, but I kept Brador alive here because I wasn't sure if there was more to him, and
You can
sure
get
enough
that
he
big
does invade you a
stick?
total of 4 times throughout the rest of the stage. Once outside his cell, once on a bridge, once in ambush when you pick up an item down below, and once in a
Yo,
cave.
is that a dex
Each
weapon though,
time
or
he drops a
strength?
different piece of his attire. The clothing has its own story as well. Turns out, Brador was a church assassin who wore the beast hide of his former compatriots. The church gave him a bell that
Strength?
he could ring to hunt people down and stop people discovering their secrets. And we'll talk more about him later, but moving on. In the next section, I spied one of those mollusk
It's
things
blood
clinging
tinged.
to a
What's
post,
blood tinged?
and I was
Strength?
like, yeah, I'm not going to let myself get ambushed by that thing. I still remembered how one of them fell on me in an earlier level, and then I was like worried about looking upwards, and hundreds of them crawled out of shells and ambushed me, and I felt pretty stupid. But seriously, do you remember that first one that fell out of the sky in episode 1? It makes sense now, doesn't it? All along there was this world above us, we just didn't have the insight to see it, and how this one fell out of the nightmare itself is beyond me, but it's a cool concept to think that all of these
Dude.
nightmares are layered.
You got to be super analytical, or maybe just pay mildly attention to the game you're playing to even remember that.
It makes me think about the ship masts all over the ocean as we progress. Think about it, you've actually seen these ship masts before.
We have?
You can actually see them in the Nightmare Frontier, suggesting
Oh, yeah.
that there's water down there, hidden in the fog, or perhaps that the Nightmare Frontier is even connected to this nightmare, but
My man's a lore master, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I'm not convinced. Vadi, close relative of Miyazaki.
is even higher up. After all, in the first stage of the DLC, there's an amygdala
Oh, it's all
corpse
fake
as
lore.
well.
This is all conjecture and
Perhaps
fake.
it fell out of the Nightmare
Cerso!
Frontier as well.
You can't have a fake lore video. We didn't talk about fake lore during any of this. And the
Is
second
even
we
higher
talk
up.
about it,
After
ladies
all,
and gentlemen,
in the first stage of the DLC,
just saying.
there's an amygdala corpse as well. Perhaps it fell out of the Nightmare Frontier as well. This is really speculation, but interesting to think about. To quote the Cosmic Eye Watcher badge, here we stand, feet planted in the earth, but might the cosmos be
Kaz.
very near us.
Some
only
say
just above our heads.
chasm.
All of the Nightmare realms are really high up, and they all have Great Ones residing at some of their highest points.
That's why
Land
they're
masses float in the Nightmare
genuflecting.
Frontier, with Murgo in his loft in the tallest tower. The hunter's dream is
I
nestled
recognize
amongst
this
these
elevator.
arch-tree-looking things in the clouds, with the moon presence descending from above, and the hunter's nightmare is within a great ocean, below a grand lake of mud, and on the beach of said lake is the washed-up corpse of a great one that was discovered long ago.
Kaz. So you never get to see Kaz in normal form? So Kaz was one of the great ones. But I don't understand why could Kaz have a kid? I don't understand that. And there's the envelope, ladies and gentlemen. But they said the great ones couldn't have kids, so they had to use other things as surrogates.
Born from this corpse is the orphan of Kos. How curious that the orphan's mother wasn't alive for the birth. It reminds me of how the moon presence must die for us to be born as a great one as well.
Hold on. What do you say?
His mother was orphan of Kos.
Orphan of Kos. They could try to have kids, it just never worked.
Born from this corpse is the orphan of Kos. How curious that the orphan's mother wasn't alive for the birth. It reminds me of how the moon presence must die for us to be born as a great one as well. This is probably one of the hardest bosses in Bloodborne. The orphan is insanely quick, he has a hugely varied moveset, and he even has a second phase where he evolves into a butterfly-looking thing. The neat little observations in this fight are
we know that
he's fighting you with the placenta that trailed out with him when he was born.
Bruh.
Confirmed.
When he was born, and also that Mother Kos herself has a face. Turns out she's somewhat humanoid in form, just like he is. And I actually can't help myself. I start talking about gameplay, and then I get pulled back to talking about the lore again. I kind of figure that you guys are realizing how good the gameplay has been for the most part in this level. It's been an amazing stage. But let's just roll with it, let's just talk about the story, while I show you some of my failed fights against this guy. Specifically, let's talk about why our character is here, why we're doing all of this. We do have most of the items and dialogue now, after all. In the dialogue at the start, we learned that the Byrgenwerth scholars stumbled upon this fishing village, and that they did some pretty terrible things. Not only did they violate the villagers themselves, as mentioned in the Accursed Brew description, but they must have also stumbled upon the Great One, Kos, or her corpse at least, which washed up on the shore, because they managed to get themselves cursed. The man at the start of the village, and even the woman speaking as you get pulled into the DLC, remember her? Both of them plead for curses to be placed upon the fiends, upon their children and their children's children, on man and woman alike. A bottomless curse, a curse forever true. And the Great Ones do have the power to curse people. According to the Defiled Chalice, which is an item a lot of us probably have forgotten about, curses are, and I quote, caused by inciting the anger of the Great Ones. Additionally, according to the Moon Rune, as I've mentioned, the Great Ones are sympathetic in spirit, so it's not crazy to think that a Great One may have listened to the inhabitants of the fishing village as they pleaded for the Byrgenwerth scholars to be cursed in return.
The Byrgenwerth scholars.
The curse means that the Byrgenwerth scholars and, eventually, their successors, the hunters, would be drawn into a hunter's nightmare upon death. And it's a pretty perfect curse when you think about it. It's like the Great One is saying, oh, you like hunting so much? Well, live here forever, and hunt for all eternity, then. Sinan tells us that the village is the source of the sin, and implies that we can bring an end to the curse here. So we do what a hunter does best. We hunt.
Ladies and gentlemen, finish him! Oh, that had to feel so good. So, everyone in the village is cursed. I didn't recognize that rain before. All right, explain this one, Body. What is this? What is that? You get an explanation on that?
Sweet child of Kos, returned to the ocean.
But the ocean is a nightmare.
Curse, a bottomless sea, accepting of all that there is and can be.
Sounds like a good tattoo.
When you get back to the Hunter's Dream, the doll will tell you that both she and German sense that they've somehow been freed from their shackles. This happens to the doll and German when you kill Maria and the orphan, respectively. I'm starting to understand how they're connected to these creatures, but it is still really weird that they can sense their counterparts in the nightmare. I'm still trying to figure it out. Hell, I personally haven't even got this dialogue yet, because the doll doesn't give you the dialogue if the dream is on fire, which is annoying. I'll have to play through again so I can show it to you. but so much to talk
That's
about here.
dedication.
There's a million other things I want to talk to you guys about. There's even another boss in this DLC that I don't have time to include. But mostly, I really want to talk to you guys about the lore still. This DLC revealed a ton about the timeline, it reveals a lot about how Nightmare Realms work, and it's raised even more questions that I myself haven't answered. It's expanded the stories of Gurman, of Mikolash, of Lawrence, and the doll, and all of those videos will be coming soon, I promise. I could rush the lore stuff out for views, but I do want to do it properly, so thank you for subscribing and waiting, and I reckon it's best to do it right the first time.
Yo, can we get a link to...
I also have to thank you guys for supporting this 3-part series so well. I didn't think a playthrough would go down so amazingly,
Click the
but it did,
bonfire.
and I really appreciate all the likes and views and the thousands and thousands of comments. I love telling stories, and I enjoyed telling my own story about
you did
my
a great
playthrough and
job, man.
observations, and it was really cool to read yours in the comments as well. You guys rock. Let's do it again sometime. And also, lastly, a special thanks to all the patrons that support me
Oh, you're
over
welcome.
on Patreon. You've made it possible for me to do this
My
full
pleasure. Yo, that's... I'll tell you what, you guys know me in fake lore. I'm not about it, but I've really enjoyed these videos. These are very well done. Prepare to Cry Remastered. Dark Souls 3 Secrets. Where's his Bloodborne playthrough? I really enjoyed this, man. This was really cool. I know there's a few people that suggested it. Thank you so much. This was it's cool. Like I said, I have a greater Whisperings of Bloodborne 2. Here's my thought. Bloodborne 2, final boss. You go back into time and you fight Kaz. Some say Kazum. At least drop him a subscription. I got you. I got you. I got you. The cut content of Bloodborne. Bloodborne Undone. I want to watch Prepare to Cry Bloodborne Edition. Does he have one of those? Prepare to Cry. We're pretty far removed from Dark Souls lore. The Hollows of Londor. Top-down Souls-like Dark Mouse. What is this?
start, then it would be way too complicated.
I'm good. When did Bloodborne come out? Man, I'll tell you what, like, knowing that there's like, I mean, that's not just a throw against the wall type story. Like, that's like deep lore. That's really impressive. 2015. Okay. 50 insights. Dark Souls 4 news. Prepare to Cry. Alfred. DeJura. Eileen the Crow. Father Jackaloni. 50 interesting insight is so good. Let's do Jackaloni. Let's see what this... I think that's the most memorable out of all of them.
When the old blood was found, it must have been thought a miracle. They called it the blood of the gods, and rightly so, for if you injected it into your veins, you would no longer be afflicted by the weaknesses of the flesh. It follows that a city built upon this blood would become
That's a
mighty
great
indeed.
shot, man. That's
And so
like
it was
background.
with Yharnam. The supply of the blood was controlled by the healing church, and the church became the most powerful of all. But the blood was foul, infected. Those who had taken the old blood began transforming into hideous beasts, and eventually the church could keep the scourge a secret no longer. Fearing the populace itself, they retreated into Cathedral Ward and devised a plan to fight back.
Normal
The church hunters were that plan. The hunters in white specialized in experimental blood ministration, for the church continued to use the old blood, albeit now with fear in their hearts.
Father
The hunters in
Jackaloni is
black
just a
were
notch in
little different.
Cerso's golden wave
Their
maker.
role was to violently purge this town of the beastly scourge.
Yo, hear me out.
Beasthood was a
Commission
cancer,
Vadi
and with their
to do
surgical
a
white gloves,
Cerso
the Black
lore
Church
video.
hunters would rip the beasthood from the hearts of the Yharnamites. They
Could
were
you
known to
imagine the
dispose of victims,
pageantry?
even potential victims, before signs of sickness had even manifested themselves.
I would have to
Their
reveal
black
too much
attire
about the deep
inspired
lore.
fear in the hearts of the Yharnamites, for if they decided
Costly,
that you
but
had the
worth
beast
it.
within you, then it was so. But the beast lies dormant within us all, and ironically, the clerics transformed into the most terrifying beasts. Father is a title used for clerics in a foreign land,
There's a fan
and the
book, I
healing
got you.
church knew no such rank. An outsider, Father Gascoigne
He's really good
joined
at
the
these
ranks
videos,
of
man.
the Black Church hunters. Perhaps he, like many others, was sick and needed treatment. Perhaps he saw the miracles that the church was performing, actual miracles that could have inspired a new faith
there's
in
that
man.
clock thing.
Or perhaps it was the thirst for blood that drew him here.
Drummond got traded.
For Gascoigne turned out to be a truly capable hunter, a fine addition to the ranks of the church. Gascoigne was partnered with another, an older hunter by the name of Henry.
Let's go!
Capable beyond his years, this old man was easily recognizable in his unique yellow garb.
All right.
Its description tells us that they were a fierce and gallant duo, but also that their partnership led to Henrique's tragically long life. He must have been very old indeed to be tragically so. Perhaps Gascoigne's access to the church granted Henrique access to the old blood, and it's possible that the miraculous blood granted him life beyond his years. Who knows what that can do to a man? Together, Henrique and Gascoigne were a part of the effort to purge Yharnam of the scourge. Just two more hunters doing what hunters must, for the good of the city, of course. Gascoigne even found love outside the church's walls within central Yharnam. A woman named Viola, blonde and favouring a bright red brooch. Perhaps the jewel was a gift from a hunter. Imagine being a man of Yharnam during this time. Put yourself in this city. As a good Yharnamite would, you join the nightly hunt with your brothers, fighting against the scourge. You lock your women and children safely at home, with incense at their doors to ward away the beasts. You fight alongside the Black Church hunters, though these men of the church are watching you at all times for any signs of the plague. You fight alongside those who would kill you.
NPC roleplay. I do like you could turn the HUD off in the game.
Viola fell pregnant. Soon after, Gascoigne left the healing church. Perhaps he had something more important to him now.
Who are you? I don't know your voice, but I know that smell. Are you a hunter?
That's his kid?
Family must have pulled him away from the church, and on the night of our unending hunt, we find this young girl alone in her family's home.
She's really looking for my mum. Daddy never came back from the hunt, and she went to find him. But now she's gone too. I'm all alone and scared.
We're looking for a woman with a red brooch and a man garbed in black. Imagine being Gascoigne at this point in the story. An ex-hunter of the healing church, he still wears the tattered black garb that shows how faithfully he served the church in their hunt. And tonight, the hunt is worse than any night before it. Tonight, the line between man and beast is blurred. The beast men of Yharnam cry for death to their ministers, if they see you wearing the minister's garb. This is the exact same thing Gascoigne was wearing.
What?
How
was that even in the game? That level of detail.
Clear exactly what happened in the Tomb of Erden, but here we find Father Gascoigne, surrounded by the corpses of fellow Yharnamites, hacking them to pieces, completely lost to his thirst for blood. On a rooftop nearby, we find his wife, dead.
My mum wears a red jeweled brooch. It's so big and beautiful, you won't miss it. Oh, I mustn't forget. If you find my mum, give her this music box. It plays one of Daddy's favourite songs. And when Daddy forgets us, we play it for him so he remembers. Mum's so silly running off without it.
A small music box received from a young Yharnam girl plays a song shared by her mother and father. Inside the lid is a small scrap of paper, perhaps an old message. Two names can be made out, however faintly.
When you play it, he doesn't attack you?
And Gascoigne. When we play their song, the husband recoils in agony. Gascoigne is losing himself to the beastly scourge. He wants to forget, but the music reminds him of his wife, his children, his city, his humanity, his dead wife, his broken city, his despair. His wife is likely dead at his hand, for she didn't have their music box to remind him of who he was, as she had done many times before.
That's crazy that's in the game.
Gascoigne is beyond saving, and you end his suffering. It almost sounds as if his last words
you didn't notice this on your first
"Forgive
playthrough. Oh my gosh. Like, this is in the game.
We don't have the heart to give a
Miyazaki.
child her dead mother's brooch. Instead, we send her to Erden Chapel. She can't stay in this house alone, for neither her mother nor her father is coming back for her. Better to send her to a safe place.
Hello, Miss Hunter. Still can't find my mum.
Just no.
Oh, okay. I can wait. But isn't there something I can do? Maybe Mum and Dad are stuck out there, waiting for me to come and find
Oh,
them.
he flashes
What
to
do you
them.
think,
No.
Miss Hunter?
We send her to Erden Chapel.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Miss Hunter.
Did we do that
I
too?
love you almost as much as Mum and Dad. And Granddad.
She never appears there.
Oh, no.
Trace the path she would have taken.
No.
Imagine this little girl creeping through a sewer filled with crawling corpses and carrion crows, to run past it all and come so close to the chapel, only to spy this thing at the end of the tunnel.
No, don't tell
It
me.
eats the little girl, and after your revenge, you find the bloodied white ribbon upon its remains.
Oh, no. What?
You haven't by any chance seen my little sister, have you?
Someone did come back for the little girl. Turns out Gascoigne had 2 daughters, and you just sent one to her death.
I told her to look after the house. But she's run off somewhere. She's still quite small. And wears a big white ribbon. Have you seen her out there anywhere? Oh. How did this happen? Why would she ever go outside?
The fade to the pig.
At least I'll have something to remember her by.
The truly sad thing is, a friend of the family was waiting at Erden Tomb around this time. The one the littlest daughter calls Grandad. He could have met the youngest daughter there, had the pig not consumed her in the tunnel. Instead, Henrique goes mad here in this place. Perhaps he discovered that someone killed his friend, or perhaps, since the littlest daughter calls him Grandad, he discovered the corpse of his daughter, Viola.
Perfect timing. I must warn you not to go near the tomb below Erden Chapel in the Cathedral Ward. Henrik, an old hunter, has gone mad, and he's my mark.
When we arrive, we're already too late. As with Gascoigne,
What's
loss
that outfit?
pushes Henrique over the edge. We've seen that hunters turn into terrible beasts, so the hunter must become
Oh, that's when we
hunted.
double teamed.
That wasn't necessary of you, but you have my thanks. We made it with our lives. You're not bad at all. You must have killed Gascoigne as well, then. He was falling apart, I'm sure it had to be done. But try to keep your hands clean. A hunter should hunt beasts.
Sounds like Jon Snow.
Leave the hunting of hunters to me.
Gascoigne killed his wife. We killed Gascoigne. Henrique tried to kill us, so Eileen killed Henrique. The last surviving daughter throws herself off a ledge upon receiving her sister's bloodied ribbon.
What?
And the bloodline of Gascoigne ends here. However, somewhere, in another hunt perhaps, you never spoke to the littlest daughter. She never went looking for her parents. She never travelled down this tunnel. She stayed home until her sister returned, and they huddled together until morning came.
I won't be afraid. I know. I do. The morning always comes.
The redemptive path where you don't send her to the pig farm. They get oinked up. Yo. Dude. I know what I'm watching. There's just so much. Like, There's so much lore here. Check out Vadi Vidya on YouTube. Holy cow, man. Like I liked how we did it. Like we beat the game, we have the real lore, and then we can watch the fake lore after. You know? That's cool. Is Indy here? We don't have permission. But let's just see what he has. You know what we're looking for. All right. No, this is cool. This is like a whole new treasure trove. We gotta watch Whisperings of Bloodborne 2.
Over the past few weeks, there have been a ton of whisperings about Bloodborne 2, most of them fueled by this doll you find in DANGHEESLING, From Software's new VR title.
Oh, what's DANGHEESLING?
DANGHEESLING, From Software's new VR title. Do you reckon it's trying to tell us something? It is making contact, after all, and this doll is definitely the same one as in Bloodborne. The question you have to ask yourself is, does this confirm Bloodborne 2, or is Vardy just tricking me into watching his DANGHEESLING content?
Oh, I don't
Here's
want to watch DANGHEESLING.
A doll of the stone girl Fiona, who appears in the unfinished tale. When a person has a bad dream, Fiona appears and helps them flee. The name Fiona is likely a homage to Fiona MacLeod, whose poetry inspired DANGHEESLING. But regardless of the name, this is still our plain old doll from Bloodborne, who appears in our terrible dream and who helps us survive the night. But most notably, they say this doll appears in the unfinished
They said it was
tale,
just an Easter egg. I give him credit then to make a 12-minute video on an Easter egg. Is that the last Dark Souls or Bloodborne video he made? Major reveal. Bloodborne cut. There's a lot of stuff, man. This was cool. Yo, big shout out to Vadi for letting us watch these on the show, man. We're not gonna watch all, just a couple.
Let's go over a bunch of the more
Just a
curious
couple.
parts of
Just
the
a
Old
couple.
Hunters.
Just
Some
a
of
few.
these insights are pretty significant, and some are just minor observations, but fact is, there's roughly 50 insights in this video, so make sure you keep an eye on that frenzy meter, yeah? Let's start with the Eye of a Blood-Drunk Hunter. In the same way that the Tonsil Stone allows one amygdala to transport us to the Nightmare Frontier, the Eye allows another amygdala to transport us to the Hunter's Nightmare.
Queen
I thought it was
Amidala.
interesting to discover that the amygdala needs something related to the corresponding Nightmare realm to transport us there. Next, the grave that connects the Hunter's Dream to the Hunter's Nightmare is also the grave we find the Old Hunter's Bone at in the waking world.
Is that
the
our
Old
bone?
Hunter's Bone allows our hunter to learn the lost art of quickening, which
What is
was
that?
a technique particular to the first hunters, and indeed many hunters like
Whoa, what
Maria.
was that? Resin.
The Old Hunter's Bone allows our hunter to learn the lost art of quickening, which was a technique particular to the first hunters.
Resin
And
roll?
Indeed, many hunters like Maria dash like this in the Hunter's Nightmare without use of the bone.
Oh.
Third, there's a deceased amygdala in the Nightmare, and as we discover this new realm, we learn that Nightmare realms are almost certainly linked to one another. They all have amygdala, they all have winter lanterns, which are based off the doll in our dream. The ship masts in the fishing hamlet can be seen from the Nightmare Frontier.
It uses full bullets and makes you dash.
You know, even the washed up corpse of Kos looks kind of similar to these things in the Nightmare Frontier. We're learning more and more about these nightmare realms, especially how they have a very real ability to shape events in the waking world. Next up, have you noticed that the old hunters all wear a garb with the same red cloth on the inside? Maria, Gurman, their attire is consistent with the time that they're from, which I thought was a nice,
Because red's the
subtle
best color,
design
second to
touch.
gold.
The description of the old hunter's gear also tells us that the people in this time were quite superstitious. For instance, they used to think that the beast blood crept up the right leg, hence they put a belt around the right trouser leg. As pointed out by a bunch of you in the first video, this might explain why German has a peg leg on his right. Some of you suggested that it might have been amputated in some outdated method of prevention. And German and his peg leg both are viewable in the trailer for The Old Hunters. Have a look here, you can just see his peg leg, which is curious because it doesn't just make it any old hunter wearing German's garb, it's German himself walking through the fishing hamlet here. It places German's character undeniably within the events that The Old Hunters depicts, and we'll go into a bit more depth on that later. For now though, look at the bloodlickers you come across in the Blood River. I used to think that bloodlickers were limited to Canehurst, as if there was some sort of strain of the old blood that created them, because they're so different to other beasts.
Lord,
But
out of
because
my
they're
mind.
here, it makes it more likely that bloodlickers just appear where a lot of blood has to be present. The bloodlickers in Canehurst, for example, they likely appeared when the big slaughter took place there, where the executioners wiped out all of the Valbloods and slaughtered them. These bloodlickers would have fed on the corpses, but, years have passed since then, so all the bloodlickers there are skinny and roaming for food when we encounter them, but the ones here in the Nightmare in the Blood River are fat and bloated. In The Old Hunters, there is a heavy concentration of items and NPCs related to the powder kegs. The Gatling gun, the piercing rifle, the boom hammer, all of these are weapons that the Old Hunters use, and all of it is going to help a lot when we're putting together a timeline for the things that we see in this nightmare. Take Lawrence, for example. The fact that he appears in the nightmare on fire might be because this is how he died. Maybe he died to the Molotovs of the powder kegs, maybe in the Purge of Old Yharnam, perhaps. Just speculation, of course. The Gatling gun hunter, who we find in the cave, is described by his weapon as being the youngest of Jura's 3 companions, and he's wielding a portable version of the Gatling gun that Jura operates in Old Yharnam. Given his relationship to Jura, I find it really curious that he too seems to be protecting the beasts. Why else would he be standing at the entrance to the dead-end cave with his back turned to
Dude, the lore in this game is
deadly beasts
unlike anything I've ever even comprehended before.
We see this behavior in the Sawspear Hunter of Old Yharnam as well, who I feel pretty comfortable now calling one of Jura's companions. When you reach Simon outside the first shortcut, you can actually just kill him here if you want his bowblade weapon as soon as possible, and don't worry about the key he gives you later, it will appear in the spot that he usually gives it to you. Another NPC I should mention is Walter. If you crush 5 vermin and reload the area to acquire his helmet, his name and appearance will change to reflect that when you summon him. He becomes a helmetless Walter, the Beast Eater. His duties, apparently,
looks like the guy from Scream
to you. In addition, your league stance also changes to have you place your hand in front of your heart. Before we start talking about Ludwig, do you remember this snail girl that fell from the sky? I'm sure a lot of you put together that she fell from the above water world above our heads that's not able to be seen from this perspective, and I even got a shot of her falling from a distance just to make sure that's where she's coming from. Someone pointed me to this video recorded by Reddit user Dr. Xanthine MD, who discovered that you can actually revive the snail girl using the Madara's whistle on her corpse. It must activate a part of the hitbox that's untouchable.
What is that?
Because you can't damage her otherwise. Now, onto Ludwig. How many of you had this little blood corpse survive the fight? It's surprisingly difficult to keep him alive, and altogether pointless, really. He just chuckles to himself once the fight is over. And if you look closely at Ludwig, you do realize a few things. He has eyes on the inside of his little growth here, and he's also wearing what looks to be the executioner's garb, and his moonlight greatsword is strapped to his back during Phase 1. It's really cool to see that he retains a bit of his humanity when he lays eyes upon it. If you leave Ludwig's head alive after talking to it and reload your game, you'll reappear to find that Simon put Ludwig out of his misery instead. There's an arrow through his eye.
What?
A couple of you guys in the first video pointed this out to me, and I thought it was really cool. But it was only after I watched a German
think
spy's
all this stuff
playthrough
through and
that
then
I figured
execute
out
on
how
it.
to get the most dialogue out of these characters. And you know, that's interesting information for me since I need to record this dialogue. You should check out a German spy's playthrough, by the way. He's got like one of the most knowledgeable playthroughs of the DLC out there, and he uses some pretty overpowered techniques. Moving on past Ludwig, did you know that if you die outside the bell ringer's room, then he'll say this?
Unending death awaits those who pry into the unknown.
We heard that.
Up ahead, in the main cathedral chamber, we discover that the all-popular How to Pick Up Fair Maidens has been ordered in bulk by the folks in the Nightmare. Must have been recommended by German or something. One of these fair maidens here is dressed in white.
Oh,
and
do we get
the
that
same
weapon now?
phrases that Vicar Amelia did. Logically, this is Amelia, and logically she entered the Nightmare after we killed her. She prays in a different location now, but she's still potentially praying at Lawrence's skull. Send the elevator up without you on it. Go underneath, and you'll find Lawrence's human skull.
It's almost like Civil Rights spend a year's worth of development time making sure this lore is in
place.
place.
The surgery altar itself. Putting aside all of the symbolism involved when we insert eyes into the inside of the skull and ascend into the heavens, how many of you actually noticed that there is a beast underneath the table? I caught onto this when I read a tweet by Hellkite Drake, another uploader who you should check out. The beast under the table reminded him of the beast in the opening cutscene of Bloodborne when you get the blood transfusion, and I gotta agree, the whole scene here symbolizes to me that latent beasthood is always a threat lying in wait,
In
but
all
it's
of
also
us.
something that the
Every
church
one of us.
awakened through their experiments. Worth noting also is the book, the bell, and this hat, mask thing that looks curiously like Willem's. Moving up to the research hall, let's take a look at these statues. It's getting to the point now where we can sort of notice these trends in Bloodborne's architecture, and I'm starting to see these hunched over shapes everywhere. These things in the fishing village, the fishmen in the village, the alien statues in the cathedral. They really like this shape in Bloodborne. When we finally finish
breaking
Adeline's
down
questline,
Gothic art,
she shares the
architecture.
Milkweed rune with us. On the Fextra Life wiki, someone has written that the inscription of the rune resembles the letters HP, which could be a reference to H.P. Lovecraft,
What's
whose work
H?
is clearly an inspiration for Bloodborne. In fact, the story of the fishing hamlet is incredibly similar to Lovecraft's horror novel The Shadow over Innsmouth, which a lot of people have pointed out to me in the third video's comment section. The plot details a secretive town, humanoid fishmen, and the notion of human sacrifice, so pretty similar. But speaking of great bodies of water in the fishing village, as pointed out by commenter Iskaral1, the word loch from Loch Shield means lake in Irish.
There's
or
a
Gaelic.
shield in the game?
And, of course, this is all behind the giant clock tower that Maria guards. In an earlier video, we pointed out that the hands align to point to the Great Lake rune, but what about the other runes here? Well, there are a bunch of them, and some are missing, most are there, but there is one here that I don't recognize. It's this massive squiggles, and there's not
Frame
another rune in the game
perfecticity.
like this, right? The closest thing I can find are the clockwise runes, but even they don't have these shapes. And it's weird because FromSoft had a bunch of runes they could have used here. They didn't use all of them, so why put one here that doesn't exist in-game? It's just making me curious, thinking like, there's something we haven't found yet. And I should take this moment to point out that no one has found the level 3 guidance rune yet. The official DLC guide does tell us that
What
it
is
exists within the depth 5 route chalice dungeons, so if you're one of the rare people who enjoy doing the chalice dungeons, then get out there and find that rune. Let's move on to Maria. She's a really interesting character with curious
If
motivations.
Vadi's
and
not
a
playing
fascinating
Chalice
background.
Dungeons,
The Rakuyo weapon she uses lists her as a distant relative
Just
to
saying,
the Queen of Canehurst.
this dude is
and even
Bloodborne
the Evelyn pistol she uses
scholar,
is
and
a
he's not
pistol
playing
favored
Chalice
by the
Dungeons.
Canehurst Knights. The Rakuyo we find in the well was her weapon that she allegedly threw away when she could stomach it no longer. It's a simple
Forget
weapon.
about all these
It's not
boss
a blood
fights,
blade
man.
like the Chikage, but we do know that Maria gave into her thirst for blood, since she certainly fights with blood in the boss fight, and even the goblet beside her looks as if it had blood within it. There's
Goblet.
also a picture
Golden
beside
goblet.
her, but the glass is so shattered that it's almost impossible to make out what it is. There are a lot of other cool details with her. For example, the way she lets go of your hand here reminds me of the way you hold your hand up to the doll to level up. Only an honest death will cure you now, she says, and I take this to mean that only truly breaking your spirit in a fight against her will stop the hunter coming back. She also says, a corpse should be left well enough alone, which mightn't just be related to her, it could be in reference to the corpse of Koz at the end of the fishing hamlet. She is clearly aiming to protect this corpse, and must have had a huge amount of distaste
Is that
for
her?
what the hunters did here, and for all the hunters coming through. Remember that grave that overlooks the corpse of Koz on the cliffside? The one with the lumen flower placed upon it. I'm almost certain that Maria placed this grave and flowers here because she's done the same thing within the astral clock tower room for this coffin here, and also because the balcony key tells us that Maria hoped Adeline would find comfort in the faint breeze that carried the scent of flowers from the outside.
I am
so
just
her use of
mine
flowers
is
here
completely
is
shattered.
pretty well referenced. There's also this fairly rare thing that happened to me when I was practicing for the boss guide. Maria can stagger and riposte you if you get hit by this specific double-bladed attack. It almost looks like she's holding you close and whispering something in your ear before she rips her fist out of your chest. When you do defeat Maria, take a look at her death animation. Twitter user Halman made the observation that it looks almost identical to German's. Both characters reach towards the heavens before falling forward. After you kill Maria, you will also get this dialogue from the doll.
Good hunter, this may sound strange, but have I somehow changed? Moments ago, from some place, perhaps deep within,
Is that her?
I sensed a liberation from heavy shackles. Not that I would know. How passing strange.
We
You
never
can actually listen to
we never
all of
pay
the
attention to the
dialogues
death
from the game
animations
on
because they're always
Moonlight
pogged up.
Butterfly's channel, which will be in the description. There's a million things worth mentioning as soon as we enter the fishing hamlet. Most of these things, I found, revolve around the villager who walks towards you initially. He has the same models as most of the spellcasters in the village, and there's a
Does he
lot
have
of
a peg
curious
leg?
things to note about him. Firstly,
Oh.
you can't actually kill him, even when he appears to have no health left. All you can do is knock him down and feel bad about yourself as he struggles to pick himself up. Of course, not to be deterred, I promptly beast-roared him off a cliff.
Berg.
No, never mind, he's still walking around down there, if you look closely. Moving on, he also reacts when you knock over the small pile of shells near him, which is interesting, and one of the oddest things I've found is that if you watch him all the way until one of the last piles of shells, then he'll actually start to cast a lightning spell as he steps over the shells. I don't know if this is a pathing error or something. It's weird. This could even be related to how some of the other lightning spellcasters seem to be casting lightning upon the other larger versions
How do you even
of these
notice this
shells
stuff in a
when you
game?
sneak up on them. Why they're casting lightning upon shells, I have no idea. Let me know in the comments below if you have. If you talk to him with the milkweed rune equipped, then he gives a ton more
It's his
dialogue,
job.
and he also gives you an
Pay
arcane
attention.
spell,
You
as I've
study it.
mentioned in another video.
Read
Also,
Reddit.
by the way, did you know that this cauliflower head glows in the dark?
Oh.
When you kill the orphan in the ending cutscene, you hear this chant, which is likely spoken
notice,
by
Lord, don't
the
play in
male
Pog
villager at
Kappa.
the start. But this dialogue and the chanting in general, it isn't
I
that
think it's my
unique.
favorite line.
After you kill the
Most
orphan
memorable
and
line.
the rain goes away, you can hear the chants of the voices in the huts more clearly. Here's what I think they're saying.
What? What? Wow.
Mother is dead, her baby taken. Of all the dialogue I strained my ears to hear, I feel like this is the most significant. The notion that the orphan of Kos was taken from the corpse is novel information in and of itself, and it follows that the hunters had something to gain from stealing the orphan. 3/3 of
Frontal
an umbilical cord,
pog?
perhaps? I do have to do some more thinking on this, so we'll get back to it in another video. But at the very least, it explains why the villager at the start pleads for mercy upon the poor wizened child. It's because the child was taken. I would really love it if you guys went there and strained your ears to hear some of this stuff. I might be wrong, and you might discover something new for everybody to talk about, you know? Because who knows what else is hidden in this dialogue. You can hear their voices very clearly near the beheaded hanging man, which is the symbol of the hunters, and also the shape of a man whose blood has gone to his head, which seems pretty appropriate for the curse that was laid upon the hunters, if you ask me. I mean, they turn into beasts when the blood goes to their head, so... I wonder if the villagers themselves serve as inspiration for the alien-like statues in the Grand Cathedral. I always thought it was weird that the statues wielded these long harpoon-like spears, which are pretty much unique weapons to those in the fishing village.
He's not wrong.
But not all of the fishmen in this village are wielding harpoons, though. Many have scraping tools
did we get that
they
helmet?
use to
What
dig
helmet is
through the
that?
mud, which explains the piles of these little orbs that I assume are eggs, and also the piles of the little shells, which are like little versions of the big shells that the snail girls crawl out of. Furthermore, you'd be wrong to assume that these light blue things
That's what we
are
become at
fish.
the end of the game.
They're quite clearly slug-like creatures when you look at them closely, and they're caught in nets, they're on the ground, they're in barrels.
That's what
and
we become.
Most interestingly, I also found a slug being used as a candle here, which implies that they're flammable to an extent, and maybe that they can be used as fuel. I suppose that explains the flammable barrels around the area as well. Some of the stuff you can find by looking in depth at these things is pretty insane. Progressing a little further, I want to point out a tip that was suggested by many people in the third playthrough video. It's that, finally, there is a use for the shaman's bone blade. If you're having trouble getting the rakuyo, this is probably the way to do it.
How do you get the moonlight?
And finally, we get to the orphan.
Kaz, the legendary.
Towards a video by Aegon of Astora, who compared the cry of the orphan to the cry of German, and discovered that they are the same sound file, albeit slightly altered. Aegon has a bunch of great cinematic lore videos as well, so you should check them out in the description. But back to the orphan being related to German. There is a link here, for sure. For one, he's wielding a weapon that has the same sort of shape as German's scythe, and also, when you kill the orphan, the doll gives you this dialogue, undeniably linking German to the orphan somehow.
Oh, good hunter. I can hear German sleeping. On any other night, he'd be restless. But on this night, he sounds so very calm. Perhaps something has eased his suffering.
Oh, and one more thing. It's probably the most amazing thing that I've ever discovered.
That's debate right there. I like it. That's it's a dude. I am just I'm completely blown away by a bunch of things. One, you know, Body did an incredible job. I mean, just there's so much to even just comprehend, but to create that, and then a step further, Bloodborne, like what in the Samuel Tarly? I did want to do this at like a little bit self-aggrandizing, but I guess not. I wanted to see something. It just I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but and I don't know what the grind involved in it is, but let's take a look at this real quick. Next time I go on the airplane, I know what I'm watching. I want to see where's trophies at in here. Can I just see my trophies? Thank you. All right. 56%. Acquire all hunter weapons. Is it hard to, is it like grindy to 100% or is it fun? Grindy. You can view the hidden trophies. Oh. Oh, show hidden information. Captivated by the moon presence. So that's like the different endings, huh? Ah. You lived through the hunt and saw another day. That's cool. Chad, as we put a pin in Bloodborne, as we send it off here, what were your thoughts of the playthrough? Your thoughts on Bloodborne? You got to beat the game 3 times. Honestly, when did we start it? In December? Took 2 months to beat. The greatest From Software game. Great playthrough, favorite Souls game. Only joined in towards the end, but it's your favorite game of all time. One of your favorites. Honestly, game is Minkus. You put on a good show. I think we got like, I'm with you. It was like Minkus, but it was kind of like hidden Minkus, you know? If you love Bloodborne, you should not want a sequel. When's the sequel come out? Minkus is our version of Monkass. In your opinion, Miyazaki shouldn't make sequels. Why is that? He doesn't like making them. Will Cerso return in Demon Souls? The games feel better when there's a bunch of world building for a unique area. Instead of, hey, we brought Andor Landor back. But it's Andor Landor. But I get what you're saying. Like the pageantry of a first time. Dark Souls 3 was amazing. Should play Sekiro or Neo next. You're playing in Neo right now. It's real good as an actual From Software game. Honestly, the final thoughts on Bloodborne, the only thing, and it's like kind of nitpicky, is like the frame. It didn't feel as like fluid, which, you know, it's technical limitations, but not the gameplay, but just like the frames, you know. And I like I ended up really liking the BV because it's like risk and reward, you know. You get yeeted, but if you get in there, you can get that health back. I wonder if they're gonna do Bloodborne 2 on PlayStation 5. It would just be, I wonder if they got like a 7-year deal or something. Sekiro's different, but it's fantastic. We got, there's a bunch on the list. I mean, this is definitely up there. But I'm hesitant to jump into like another piece of meat game right away. You know? I don't know what's next. I don't know. I know, like, I really like the meat games, but it's like we just went to the buffet. We loaded up on prime rib, top choice, AAA cut. And I can't even say what I was gonna say. Man, it's everything. Wagyu beef. Honestly, I mean, I think we got to cap it off with the final recap, you know, and just for what let's do. We'll do a community reacts. All right, we're gonna do first time ever in the history of the show. We're gonna do a community reacts. So just take this final video all in, and then just initial reaction. Because I mean, it was produced. We should watch at least twice on the show.
The story, iconic. The pedigree, legendary. The name, Surso Yeet. Throughout the years of battles, quests, adventures, and greed, Surso has fulfilled his ultimate desire to do right by the queen. And despite this tragic conclusion, our hero rests easy, knowing he did everything he could, and then some.
This is the real baddie video.
Some say that it was an impossible task for a mere mortal, but we know Surso is no regular human.
The nameless king.
A legend, an individual with qualities and strengths the world may never see again. And now he can finally lay down his weapons and rest. Enemies crushed, challenges overcome, haters doubted.
Dude, I'm gonna cry.
Surso Yeet's story is finally complete. But you know what they say. No one's ever really gone.
All right, chat react, spam the reaction. What game speaks to you? There's got to be a game that speaks to you. We're gonna audit this and conglomerate them. I can't believe that the quadrilogy is over. Demon Souls for the full experience. Sekiro is the biggest pog. All right, ladies and gentlemen. We learned about the fake lore of Bloodborne. But in all seriousness, thank you guys so much for for sticking around for the playthrough from Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne. I don't know what's next. On Monday, I could see on the Monday show, we have 2 Pieces of Bread game that we're going to try out. And we'll talk about those on Monday. But here's what I see happening, just like without sticking to it. Just had a hunking piece of beef, just a small piece of bread, and then probably another piece of beef after it. And thank you guys for all the love. You know, it's whether you've been lurking, subscribing. I just appreciate you guys being here. I do need to order a new we'll take care of that by Monday too. But with that being said, it is the end of Sursoit, the end of Bloodborne. It's been a fun journey. A lot of fun moments, memorable moments. And you never know what could happen. All right, with that being said, this is our last show for the week. But we are going to do some pack opening, ladies and gentlemen. Why are you crying in the club right now? But you know what?
Let's go.
Don't Pepe hands because it's over. Pog champ because it happened.
Let's go.
All right, we are going to what's better way to finish the Souls game than to have Vadi on the podcast? You know what? That's a good idea. I'll reach out to him. Cannot confirm that he will be open to, but you know, that's a great idea. Like I said, a lot of the time, the best ideas come from the community. I will reach out to him for sure. Dunk it, dunk it, dunk it, dunk. With that being said, though, quick Dark Souls randomizer run. All right, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, all good things come to an end, but also signify a new beginning.